We don't ever run those.
It's 7 minutes. We don't?
No, we don't ever run the sides. We always run the backs, never the sides.
Then he blows his shot.
Pardon, go out to our car, make sure the back's closed.
Already closed. It was up there. I went out there. It wasn't closed.
Yeah, I tried to close it, but then he made me go get it because I couldn't close it.
You never told me that. No, just a second. It's open.
I'm gonna fly up.
Get out my face, boy.
Hurry up, Beck. Get all this food.
Yep.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How we doing? Hey, getting started here. Welcome home cards. I will talk about them. I know Kyle gets mad, so we're gonna do that today. When you get here, if you've never been here before, if you want to keep up with us, or help us keep up with you, if you fill one out for us. Also, if you've been coming here for a while and you want to start doing stuff, which I don't suggest because I'm just supposed to be setting things up, and now I'm up here with the microphone. But if you want to take that chance, if you fill one of these out, there is some stuff on the back. You just kind of talk about stuff you like to do or how you like to stutter. And then when you fill these out, just drop them off. There's a joy box in the back, the same place you put tithes or donations or anything that you want to give. All right, gospel driven. This is what Kyle has been preaching about the last couple of weeks. It's been pretty good, even for Kyle, so be excited. All right, small groups. And you guys aren't going to believe it. I have information, okay? So, September 19th, the women's small group will be having a self-defense class at Jada's house, which is here in Culleoka. I don't have an exact address. And then the third Friday of this month, the men's group is going to smoke meats and go camping. Okay, I'm not real sure where yet. I'm not real sure when yet, but I know that I will be there. Okay, this starts tomorrow night. This is a Bible study with Miss Jones will be leading that, so if you have any other questions for her, but it is tomorrow at 7 o'clock at Starbucks in Columbia. All right, Sweetwater Youth Service. We're doing that today too. It's the second and fourth Sunday of every month, so if you've got kids 6th grade to 12th grade, we will go hang out with them for a little while after worship. And then after service, we got cookies and coffee. And besides that, that's all I got for you this morning. So we'll pray and then we'll get started. Dear Lord, thank you for letting us come together this morning, Lord. Thank you for everybody that could get here and those that couldn't. Pray that you'll be with the band this morning while they lead us in worship, and that you'll be with Kyle this morning as he brings the word. We love you. Amen.
Amen. Good morning. If everyone will stand and sing with us. This is a new song that we're doing today, and it's a secular song, but the words fit for, how his love and mercy comes upon us wave on wave. If you'll sing with us.
No direction. We're all playing the same game. We're all looking for redemption. Just afraid to say the name. So caught up now in pretending what we're speaking is the truth. I'm just looking for a happy ending. All I'm looking for is you. Came upon me with all way. You're the reason I'm still here. Not the one you were sent to say. Came upon me with all way. Walking out into the water, and I thought that I might drown. Don't know what I was after. I just know I was going down. That's when God found me. Not afraid anymore. He said, I always had you, brother. Just waiting for you to find what you're looking for. Came upon me. I'm still here, yeah. Not the one you were sent to say. Came upon me way far away. Way far away. Way far away. Came upon me way far away. You're the reason I'm still here, yeah. Am I the one you were sent to say? You came upon me way far away. I'll come back and need your smile. You ain't gotta walk alone. That's why I put you in my way. Came upon me way far away. Came upon me way far away. You're the reason I'm still here. Am I the one you were sent to say? Came upon me way far away.
Keep singing with us. How can it be? I am guilty, ashamed of what I've done, what I've become. These hands are dirty. I dare not lift them up to the Holy One. You plead my cause, you right my wrongs, you break my chains, you overcome. but in your eyes there's only grace now. You plead my cause, you right my wrongs, you break my chains, you overcome, you give your life to give me mine, and you say that I am free. How can it be? How can it be? Though I fall, you can make me new. From this death I will rise with you, yeah. Oh, the grace reaching out for me, yeah. How can it be? How can it be? You plead my cause, you right my wrongs, you break my chains, you overcome, you gave your life to give me mine, and you say that I am free. Oh, you plead my cause, you right my wrongs, you break my chains, you overcome, you give your life to give me mine, and you say that I am free. How can it be? How can it be? It's hard to comprehend, and His love is so amazing. If you'll sing this last song, Amazing Love. I'm forgiven because you were forsaken. I'm accepted, you were condemned. I'm pours over us, and we're so undeserving. And again, I can't understand it, and I don't know why, but I'm so thankful for it. Just be with us today, Lord, as we listen to your message. Open our hearts and our minds to what you would have to say. I pray in Jesus' name, amen. All right, it's time for Children's Church.
Hey, Heart Rebel.
Jay's got the little towel like what's his name, Mick Jagger? What a diva. Oh, that guy. All right, so all the kids are out. Oh, thank goodness. All right. Anyway, did you see Lincoln fall? He was on the thing and he fell and he looked back at his brother like, "What'd you do?" It was totally good. Anyway, we are in. How about the Partridge Family up here? Like, you remember when Adam was so afraid to go up there, and then your son sees you, and now he's doing it because he's afraid to be up there, but you're there, and you see how these things work? Like, you're such a good dad, man. Anyway, all right, let's get back into it. I'm sure we'll see McKenna soon and all that. We are a gospel-driven series, and this is what I was reading through Hebrews, and it said, just imitate those who have done it before you and done it well. And he's not saying don't idolize them, don't pray to them, don't do that, but these guys that have done it throughout time, and it's not just the apostles or it's not just the founders of the faith, but saints throughout history. He's saying just look at their lives. Yes, they mess up. Yes, they're not perfect, but they've given out. They've sold out to this Christianity. They've sold out. They've given their lives a lot of times, but they've just made their willingness and not their fears their God, and so it's just like Adam. You are afraid to do something, but these guys are saying, okay, now I've been changed, I've been renewed, I've done these things, and so I've given my life, and if God's called me to do it, I'm going to do it. So anyway, that's what gospel driven is about. And so today we're going to look at Matthew. He was one of the first apostles. He was one of the first 12 that Jesus called, and he is the writer of the first gospel. And so I'm on the wrong page. Yep, I'm on the right page. Anyway, so we're going to get into that, but first I do want to pray. I know we keep praying, but we're in church, all right? So let me pray, and then I just don't feel right until I pray, and then we'll get started. Father God, thank you so much for you, for Jesus. Lord, you came down, you gave us something we don't deserve, and that's eternal life, Lord. Help us to learn the struggles that we maybe are deceived, that we have self-deceived, Lord, the desires, the wants, the things that we don't need, that we can reprioritize today, Lord. Help us make it just today. Make it this day is the day we go, you know what, I don't need that, but I do need more of you. Lord, help us to grow closer to you. Lord, help us to grow closer to our community so we can help you build this world into heaven. We love you, Lord. In your name we pray. And everybody said, Amen. All right, so Matthew was one of the first disciples, and that is just the order of when it goes. Chronologically, John was the first, and then Andrew, Peter, blah, blah, blah. And then, so Matthew is somewhere in the middle. The last 5, we really don't know. So really the first 6, it's debatable, but nobody really cares, all right? So that's it. Matthew's in the middle. And what's interesting about this is Matthew is the tax collector. He is the most hated of all. So what happens is these first 5 guys are really just fishermen. They're peasants. They're poor Jewish people in the community, kind of all around, kind of located around one area we'll talk about, but just different spots. But they don't really have this thing that they need to lose. They don't have this lucrative business that they need to lose. And so Matthew is the first real I guess we could call him the scumbag of the group, right? So he's really the first scumbag that Jesus says, hey, I'm going to take a risk on you, all right? And so these other guys are really, it seems like they're the ones taking all the risk because they're leaving everything. They're leaving their nets, how they feed their family and all that. But Matthew is the first guy that really leaves something that he has nothing outside because he is such a dirtbag. Everyone thinks he's a traitor. He's stealing from his own time. He has no friends outside in the Jewish religion. So he's following a Jewish rabbi, prophet, teacher, God. So this is a big risk for him, all right? And so after that, I always wondered how Simon the Zealot is really a Jewish terrorist, all right? They would be a lot like Antifa is today, where they were, in fact, in 70 AD when Jerusalem fell, when Nero finally took over Jerusalem and destroyed the temple, it's because of zealots that were doing that. They were terrorizing the community. They were terrorizing the Roman soldiers. They just finally had enough, and they're like, hey, you're done, all right? And so I always wondered how the zealot and Matthew got along because Matthew's a traitor. Apparently, swimmingly, all right? So this is the quote that I keep putting in front of you guys, and myself, just because I want to start the service out this way. And just because I think it gets us back into the mode of, okay, self-reflection, self-examination, right? The biggest threat to the church today is fans who call themselves Christians, but aren't actually interested in following Christ. They want to be close enough to Jesus to get all the benefits, but not so close that it requires anything from them. So he's saying these people call themselves Christians, but their lives are really oriented around their own desires, their own selves, their own children, their own family, all these things, their careers, all these things that they like, they just really want to get to heaven. That's not a bad thing. It's a great place to start. But if you continue where you started 12 years later and you're still in that same place, there's a problem with your relationship, is what he's saying. Maybe there's not enough self-reflection. Maybe there's too much self-reflection. Maybe you just haven't got to that place where you've trusted God to take you through these hard things, to take you over that risky part, to take you over that and see you through it. And it's called trust. And he's saying, this is not what it's like to be a Christian. This is not biblical Christianity. Yes, it's cultural Christianity, especially here in America. You say, but it's a lot different than what Jesus said when he talked to Matthew and the disciples said, follow me, all right? So what was so special about the disciples? And really the answer is nothing. They weren't anything other than you and I. They weren't anything other than just guys that heard about Jesus. They just kind of knew him. They kind of grew up around him. They heard about him, and he became this teacher. And it was just, okay, I think I'm going to follow him. And he's taking a risk on me. He sees something in me. And so there was nothing special in them. They were ordinary people. So what made them so successful? And really, it's simple willingness. They were willing to just say, you know what, I trust you, take me where you want. And I know that's hard, and I know it's a oversimplification to say, just trust God to take you through it. Because there's some real things, there's real dangers in life. There's bankruptcy, you got bills to pay, you got kids to raise and trust, and I'm going to trip on these cords. And so I'm going to move over, all right? But just saying simple willingness is an obvious oversimplification, but it's perfect in the sense that that's really all he's asking for is availability. He's not asking you to be a theologian. He's not asking you to be the most courageous. He's not asking you to be anything like that. He's just asking you to say, follow me, and I'm going to see where it goes. All right? So let's get back to Matthew. Matthew is called in Matthew 9:9, and he wrote it. So he's actually very humble. He's a very humble man talking about it. And so he calls himself Matthew. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. There's the other Gospels, Luke especially, he talks more about how great this encounter was. And we'll talk about that a little bit. All right, so you got the highlighted parts, and I got the white parts, right? As Jesus went on from there, he saw a man called Matthew sitting in the tax collector's booth. And he said to him, follow me. And he got up and followed him. Then it happened that as Jesus was reclining at the table in the house, so that's a big jump. It's just like, follow me, now they're in a house. We'll talk about that. Behold, many tax collectors and sinners came and were dining with Jesus and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw this, they said to his disciples, why is your teacher eating with the tax collectors and sinners? But when Jesus heard this, he said, it is not those who are healthy who need a physician,
but those who are sick.
But go and learn what this means. I desire compassion and not sacrifice. It's Hosea 6:6, I think. For I did not come to call the righteous, but sinners. So what happens here is Jesus calls Matthew, and the very first thing he does, he starts building relationships. The disciples immediately started building relationships with people that were around them. They started building relationships with people that were not followers of Christ. And it was a lot easier then. Trust me, there weren't many Christians other than the 6 guys at this point, right? There was nobody, and even they were kind of on the fence, right? So I know it's a lot different, and I know the culture and the times have changed, but what they did was they saw that Jesus was taking risks on people. He was offering himself to people. He was doing things for people. His life was not about himself, but about other people that they intentionally said, you know what, I'm going to do this. And so they knew when Jesus said, follow me and do as I do, they followed in his same footsteps and they did as he did. And so Matthew does the first thing that he knows of. He throws a party, right? It's not as hard as you think to build relationships. It's not as hard as you think, all right? So where are you already? This is an easy question. As a believer in Christ, as a follower of Christ, where are you already? The disciples, they had brothers. There's 3 sets of brothers. And they all came to the Lord separately. It wasn't like a team, duo, couple thing. Like it was like we all do. There was still only one way to heaven, and that was to give your life to Christ and to follow him. And so there was 3 sets of brothers, right? James, Simon the Zealot, and Jude. They were all brothers. And then we got John and James. They were brothers, and Peter and Andrew. Andrew was the second guy that came to follow Christ. And he's the one that called out to his brother, if you remember. He's like, hey, I found the Messiah. And he's like, what? And he's like, yeah, drop your net. He's like, no, I don't think so. Like, I'm going to keep fishing. And then Jesus goes out and she's like, hey, throw on the other side. You've heard the story, right? And so he does that, and then he does it again, right? So it doesn't have to be this huge thing where you're going to China or you're going to South Korea. And you know what's interesting? In South Korea, there's more Christians that are Presbyterian, which is the largest denomination, I think. Second. Anyway, there's more Presbyterians there in South Korea than America and I believe England combined. And there's only 5% of the Catholics in the world live in America. So what I'm saying is, I don't know if you know this, but other countries come to America to evangelize because A, we're not doing it, and B, there's a lot of lost people. Like there's a lot of lost people in America. I'll never forget when I saw a church service of my old church where there was an African group that came in and they sang. It was just, they were dancing and it was crazy and it was like really fun. And it was this African group that came to that church. It's just, giant Six Flags Over Jesus church. And they preached, and he was preaching to us. I think you guys were there. I showed it to the youth group. And it was like, man, I finally got it. Like, we're not following the biblical gospel. Like, we want it, but we're not doing it. Like, these people are coming over from Africa for us, but we're already in church. He was going into churches. This group was going into churches to evangelize because they realized the churches in America are not following a biblical gospel. They're following an American gospel. And it was eye-opening, and it was really one of these moments in life where God just puts it in flag. He's like, so what are you doing to follow me? Are you following everybody else's path, everybody else's template, or are you following me? What does it look like to follow me? And so just to go back, the disciples, they talked to their brother. It's hard to talk to your family. It's hard, especially in my family. Like, it's hard to bring these things up because I don't want to offend them. I don't want them to like me. I don't want to sound too overzealous about anything. And I want to have these conversations. But they ask me sometimes, my uncles, my brother, like everybody asks me, and then we get to talk about it. And it's not overwhelming. And it's always like I feel like it's coming. I feel like it's going to come up. I just did my uncle's funeral, and so I know there's this, this spiritual side of things. And the conversations we're having, they're easier than you think they're going to be. But you really have to put yourself out there, and you really have to ask, and you have to be willing if it doesn't. All right. So also the neighbors and their homies in Capernaum, these 6 first guys, I got homies in there. All right. So the first 6 guys, the first 5 guys, and Matthew were all from Capernaum. All right. So they were all from a similar area, and I know they're brothers too. But they just know people, and you're just in that area when you're talking to people at work, when you're talking to people that you just live around, your neighbors, your friends. It wasn't hard to do this. There wasn't a church to go, hey, why don't you come to church? These were people like, hey, let's have them over for dinner. There wasn't TV. It was just talking to people. What's the most important thing in your life? And it's really just this guy that I've met. His name is Jesus of Nazareth, and it's crazy, and he's doing things. Like, well, tell me all about it. And so they have these conversations, and they were intentional about these conversations, and it paid off. I read this quote this week. Jesus was here to heal the souls of men, and he was prepared to go anywhere to do it. So should we. What I see in my own life over the last 10 years is there's a lot of places I'm not willing to go. Yes, I will go to foreign countries, and yes, I will get into some sort of intestinal disease that I still have to take pills for, and I'll even go back after that, and I'll even go there. But I'm really uncomfortable going back to Texas. I'm really, really uncomfortable to go into a church and try to preach in Texas because I was such a scumbag before. I'm really unwilling to go into certain areas just because I don't know how dangerous it is. Like, Jesus wasn't willing to not do anything. He was willing to, hey, I came for a purpose. He lived on this earth 3.5 years in ministry. 3.5 years, and he changed the world because he was willing to go anywhere he needed to go, anywhere he was called, anywhere he was sent, anywhere that he was asked for, anywhere. And sometimes he didn't even have to go. He just healed the person. He said, I did it anyway. But he was willing to meet people where they are instead of waiting for them to come to him. He went everywhere. He even says, hey, I have to go from here. As we start our scripture, he says, and he left from there to go somewhere else because he wasn't interested in setting up all the people in Capernaum were bringing people to him, mothers and their brothers, and healing them all. He wasn't interested in setting up a physician's place. He knew that they were sick. He knew that they were, but he knew that there was always going to be. He was intentionally leaving that area to go heal souls. He was more interested in souls than he was in just physical stuff. He was willing to go there, and he had to go there. He said, I have to go out because this is my ministry. So we get back to Matthew, and let's read some more of the scripture, and let's get into it. So as Jesus went on from there, we're talking about Capernaum. That's at the top of the screen. All right, Capernaum is really in his HQ, his headquarters, his really hub of where it is. And so he's obviously from Nazareth, and you've seen the map 17,000 times before, right? So you're familiar, all right? So Capernaum is there. He was leaving Capernaum because he had to go other places. He saw a man called Matthew sitting in the tax collector's booth. So Matthew is writing this about himself, and it's interesting that he uses the name that Jesus gave him instead of his name that he had before, that was Levi. All right? So he calls himself Matthew because he doesn't want to, he leaves even his name because he doesn't want that old life anymore. That's not his identity. He is now a Matthew. He's left all that, and he says, now, I don't even have a name. I don't have anything that belongs to me. What I want is everything that Jesus gives me. It's simple as a name, but it's a profound statement. And even Luke and Mark, when they brought him out, they call him Levi. But he doesn't call himself. He's so humble, and he says, sitting in the tax collector's booth. And so in Capernaum, what happened is, he was in there. Here's the call of Matthew. This is a painting, famous painting. What happens is behind Jesus, obviously the guy with the halo, didn't really look like that all the time, all right? So behind him is going to probably be the Sea of Galilee. And so what Matthew did was he sat by the docks, and as everybody came into with their boats, fishermen came with the boats, they had to come home, they had to go, he charged them a certain amount. Yes, the Romans charged them a nickel, we'll say a nickel, and to come in and to use that and to use the water and everything because they owned it. But Matthew would charge them more like a quarter, and so with the other tax collectors. And then he just kept the rest. So they hated him. This is his people. He grew up with them, and he says, you know what? Heck with them. I'm going back. I'm going to make some money in this life, and I'm going to do it. And so when Jesus meets him, he finally leaves all that. He gave up a lucrative career. He gave up lots of money. He gave up the only people that were his friends, and we'll get into that in just a little bit, and to finally risk it all because he knows that God was coming. It's a big deal. And he said to him, Jesus said to him, follow me. And he got up and he followed him. Here's how Luke puts it. This is a big deal. After that, he went out and noticed a tax collector named Levi sitting in the tax booth. And he said to him, follow me. Here's your part.
And he left everything
And he left everything behind and got up and began to follow him. Even Luke realizes there was a lot to do. Luke was a physician. He was a doctor, right? And so he understands that when sometimes you have to leave a whole lot. But what's a whole lot compared to a whole lot? Really, it's just what you and I determine as a lot of money or a lot of future. I left baseball in order to go to ministry, and people are like, how could you leave that? Who determined that was a lot to leave? It was us. It was our culture to say, hey, you had your dreams. Like, it's all about us, right? The American dream is make a lot of money, become famous, have a big house, have two kids, a dog and a cat, a white picket fence, and all these things that we've determined as something important and special. But Jesus says, hey, the only thing that's important is risking it all for me. It's to leave that all behind, leave what the world, the darkness has taught you, and to go after me. Yes, jobs are important. Yes, children are important. Yes, sports are important. But he's saying if they're more important, just like when Jesus met these guys and they said, hey, he said, I've done everything, I just want to follow you. And Jesus replies to him, he said, okay, sell everything you have and give it to me. He's like, I can't do that because money was more important. And he goes to the next guy, and the next guy says, hey, I'll do everything, I'll sell everything, and I'll follow you. He says, well, leave your mom and dad. Now family's just more important. They go, okay. And he leaves. And he goes to the next guy, hey, come and follow me. He says, I'll follow you. But first let me take care of my parents. And not that any of those things are bad. He's saying, but when those are your master, and I'm calling you to do something, and you don't do it, that becomes so I'm the only king in your life. And there's a lot of things that are very healthy and very good for us, school and kids and sports and everything in our careers. It's saying, but when that determines your priorities, that's when it's become an idol. And so what we do is we set up our weekly schedule, our own schedule. Like I've told people, and I'm going to have to stop saying this, I've told people I can't really do that. My schedule's just super busy. I've now made that person inconsequential to the schedule that I have. And I'm not saying you have to do that every time, but I don't like saying it. And I realize that I've made this schedule, this busyness so important that I'm not willing to leave what I have in order to build relationships, when the most important thing that Jesus ever did was build relationships, including mine. So our schedules become our God. And he says he's willing to leave everything behind. Left to ourselves, we will formulate a God according to our willingness instead of in our understanding. Our understanding should say people are way more important than anything that we can do. But we've set up our schedules that we have very little people time. But we expect them to come to church, we expect them to get saved, and we expect them to get baptized. We're going to have a baptism, by the way, right? McKenna, our first one at Sweetwater, super excited. So we're going to do that, and we expect them to do all that. We expect them to become like us, and we expect them to sell out to Jesus, but we still got one foot in everything that we're doing. I actually had somebody, they're not here today, so I can say, I actually had somebody was texting me this week. He's like, man, I just felt like I'm kind of an outcast, here lately in the church, and I was like, oh, dude, my bad. Like, I totally realized that. I didn't text you back that one time. He's like, no, it's okay. He's nice about it. He's like, I mean, you do a lot. I mean, there's other people in the church that can reach out too. I was like, ugh, should I say that? Should I really say that? But that's the thing. We get busy doing what we're supposed to do. We get too busy doing what church is instead of reaching out for people. And that's just, I don't know if that's anybody else. I don't know if that's just one solitary person, but that should be enough for us to say, hey, well, this reason we did this church is so we wouldn't have that feeling. We wouldn't have that say. We care more about people, but we got caught up in the machine of it, and so we have to reevaluate. We have to re-examine what we're doing right. That's our willingness. Our willingness is not meeting for lunch. Our willingness is not meeting for dinner. Our willingness is not doing things together on Sundays. our understanding should say, hey, people are more important than this thing you're doing on Sunday. Jesus was very clear about his purpose on earth and ours to follow him. It was very clear. He said, you can't be my disciple unless you leave it all. You're not my disciple. He's not saying you're not saved, you're not going to heaven. He's saying, if you're not my disciple, if you're not following for me, if there's other things that are your master, then you're not my disciple. You're putting things in front of me. That's not it. That's just not it. After generations and generations of compromise, it should be obvious to us that we're not making disciples. And that was Jesus' number one priority, am I right? It was our number one priority, but people my age have never had anybody disciple. People that are my father's age never had anybody disciple because generation upon generation say, hey, my job is more important. My kids are more important. And I'm not saying the kids aren't your disciples, but I'm saying you can do more. It's just a matter of priorities. Then it happened that as Jesus was reclining at the table in the house, behold, many tax collectors and sinners came and were dining with Jesus and his disciples. Here's how Jesus. You see the humbleness, the humility of humbleness isn't a word. The humility of Matthew said, okay, and then we got to this house all of a sudden, and Jesus is reclining there. That's how they ate. It wasn't just like him and the lazy boy, all right? They lay with their hand and they ate, right? And so here's what Luke said. Then Levi held a great banquet.
A great banquet.
Thank you. All right. Then Levi held
Great banquet.
for Jesus at his house.
And a large crowd
of tax collectors and others were eating with them. So what happens is the immediate thing from, hey, I get to be your disciple. I'm going to tell all my friends about it, right? In fact, and he even says, oh, then they came over to the house and we had a thing. He's like, no, Luke was, he's like, we had 1,000 people there and there was so much food. It cost $1,000, all right? Like it costs money. In order to make disciples, not only does it cost your availability and your willingness, but it costs your money too. He says, what you spend your money on, that should tell you what your kingdom is. Are you spending all your money on yourself and on your family? That's not a bad thing. This isn't a pitch to get a tithe into the church, and I think, and if you ask me personally, yes, I think you're commanded to do 10. You say, but what after that? That's your understanding. But what are you willing to do? Are you willing to go past that? And I'm not saying you give to the church. I'm saying, what are you willing to give to the kingdom in order to have people over your house, to go to their house, to take food over to the house, to find people that just need help and having a hard time, and you put it on Facebook and you gather a whole community and people come together and they get like, what are you willing to do? Are you willing to look like, hey, I'm just doing this because I'm a good person, or I'm really taking a stand because I want people to know Jesus Christ? Is that are you willing to tell them? Levi says it was a big banquet. It was a big deal. Capernaum knew who this guy was. And what happens is the Pharisees heard about it. They weren't very happy. Right? Because they weren't invited. Why would the tax collector invite the guy that hates him? Let me tell you, this is the fun part, guys. Like, I know, you guys cringe up, and I kind of cringe up, and you're like, oh, now I have to rearrange my priorities. And he's like, no. This is the really fun part. Have you ever had somebody just start growing, and you're just watching them, you're praying for them, and you're having them over, and they start growing closer and closer to the Lord, and they're like, hey, can you help me on this Bible? Can you help me out with this? My kids, my kids ask me some questions about Jesus, and I'm reading my Bible, I don't know what to say. Can you help me out with it? If you haven't done that, this is the greatest feeling. This is what you're created for. You're created to worship God. But if you're not having that, you're void of it, and you're going to try to fill it with something else that's going to fade. And most of the time, as Americans, we build bigger barns that are just moth and rust are going to destroy. He's saying, when you spend time devoting your life, not just to Christ, but into what Christ wants us to do and following Him and making disciples, it doesn't have to be this, hey, let's sit down with our Bibles, let's get a Devo out. That's my wife, she loves doing that, right? Me, I'm like, we're going to do sometimes. I got 2-3 guys that we go, and we go to the cigar place, Briarworks, all right, I'll say it, and sometimes we might even have a beer, all right? And we sit down, we talk about our lives, and we talk about, hey, what's going on? And last week he was like, hey, I'm thinking about this job, I'm thinking about that. I'm like, well, where's the gospel in this? Because men don't ask each other these questions anymore. We're just like, all right, great, more money. What's your family think about this? Are you taking away from your family? Or this is where you're like, hey, maybe I'm interested in going and doing ministry. Like, these are the times that it's important. But I can't do it everything, and you can't do it all. We need everybody to do it together. Because sometimes people just don't click anyway. Like, it's okay if you don't like the person and they don't like you. You're still friends. You just don't really want to hang out with each other. There's just differences. That's okay. There's somebody else that can do that, all right? There's somebody that's going to be willing to go, hey, that's my guy right there. That's my man. This is the neighbors and your homies around you, right? Being a part of people meeting and growing closer to God is the greatest feeling that you can do. It's not about Bible studies. It's not even about small groups. Small groups are probably the first time that you say, all right, I'm going to try this. I'm going to go to small group for the first time. Like the guys we're doing, we're smoking meat and camping out. Like, there's nothing you can't do there. Like, that's fun. All right? And we're gonna talk about our wives. We're gonna tease each other. We're gonna do all these things. But it's really just to get that edge and say, we're gonna learn how to trust each other. Because you're not going to want to talk about these things. You're not going to want to be friends outside if you just can't trust them. And you know that you can say something eventually, and you're going to ask for help, and they're going to ask you for help, and it's not going to be a weird thing where we're going to cry and give each other hugs, and it's not going to be like that. We're probably going to make fun of you, and we're probably going to walk you through it when everybody else leaves, all right? And we're going to say, hey, we're going to text you, and like, hey, how's it going with this, blah, blah, blah. But small group is where it first starts. Small groups are the most important things that we do at church. If you're not involved in a small group, take a risk. Take a risk on us. You probably get some smoked brisket or something like that. Daniel, you'll be there. You're in charge of all that. You get to walk through trials and joys with each other. You get to walk through the times that are hard in their marriage and your marriage. I watched my kids when me and Maddie were going through it, and we just didn't have anywhere to go. We were just like, this marriage is going to fail. What do we do? If we don't do something, it's going to happen. And so our friends take our kids. And then remember when Adeline started like suffocating when she was born, and we didn't have anywhere or she was getting born, and we didn't have anywhere to take our kids, or one kid, and because it was 3 o'clock in the morning, we dropped them off at somebody's house, and we go, like, people don't forget that because you're just available. Nobody wants you to drop off their kid at 3 o'clock in the morning. Nobody. But I've never heard one negative thing from them about it. It was great, man. It was great. I was just so happy. And we're excited. That's what being a Christian is like. Following and being compassionate and following Christ and saying, I'll be there for you no matter what. But we've resoluted to be just this Sunday morning thing. It ain't about Sundays. It has to be about something, because everybody else, every other church is about Sundays. You notice that? Why do you think other churches and other denominations and other people come to America and evangelize us? Because it's all about Sundays. When he's saying it's so much more than Sundays. Jimmy and Janet Fisher were these people that when Madison and I were living together, not married, and we were living together, we were playing baseball, and he was a deacon in this giant church, and she was, they were a friend of, their parents of one of my friends, right? And so they were devout Christians. They were great, genuine Christians. And every time that I would go to the house, I'd be like, they're going to bring it up. Like, everyone knows there's this elephant in the room, and they're like, I get it. I know it's just not financially stable, which is what everybody says, by the way, all right? You just can't afford it. Okay, stay in my basement. I'm not going to call you back. Okay, good. All right, so I feel like I have a step over here, all right? Like, I've walked through it. And so they were praying for us, and every time we went over there, they never brought it up. We knew there was an elephant in the room because we were doing something that was obviously not great and not that was a sin. And so we were doing that. And by the way, living together is not the sin. I think we all can kind of figure that part out, right? So you don't have to be living together to be in that sin. Like, we know you can be in high school and living with your parents and still in that sin. So understand what I'm saying, what the sin is. We're just making it very known to everybody, which is worse. Gratuitous, as they say. So Janet and Jimmy, they had us over, and he had a boat. He lived on a lake, and he gave me the keys to the boat. Me and my good friend would go fishing every single day in the off season, literally every single day except for Christmas and Thanksgiving. I think we went there on Thanksgiving. They would buy me lunch when we come in for fishing. He would take me. He made me feel like I was the hero every time he was around. Like, I felt so encouraged. I never once felt like, man, this guy's really looking down on me. Not one time did we go to church and sit together in church. Because it wasn't about Sundays. It wasn't about this, but it was something about Jesus. And when I told them, after a few months, when I told them, I was like, yeah, you know what, I decided to move out. I'm going to live there. I just want this relationship to reflect how I feel about Jesus and what he's doing in my life. He's like, man, I've been praying for you. That was it. Like, he genuinely meant it, and he genuinely did it, and they weren't making anybody feel bad, but they were pressing. They knew that if they pressed, they were the test, by the way. I just came in and I was like, yeah, you're the test. If you fail this, I'm not going back to church ever again. If you fail this, I put it on them. In my head, in my mind, in my heart, if you fail this, it's on you. And they never failed. They never failed. The very first time I preached, it was in middle school, right? It was horrible. I did terrible. And he was there, and afterwards he's like, man, you did a great job. Like, why would he's sitting in a crowd of middle schoolers like this? Like, why would anybody ever who took off work? He was super busy, and he gets there, and he's just like, hey, man, you did a great job. I'm like, He's like, oh man, I learned so much from you. I'm like, are you kidding me? Because that's what it's about. It's not about Sundays. And they changed my eternity. They changed it. Not because they saved me, not because anything, but because they let me believe that there was real Christians out there. And they were the real Christians. They never asked me. They never thanked me. They never said, hey, you deserve, you know, like, it was just, they were genuine believers in Christ. They were genuinely concerned about me and Madison not living in sin. And it was after that. It wasn't like they quit because we got married and all that. They were part of our lives for a long time. I even got to text him last night. He's like, oh man, that's cool. It was like, I was like, yeah, a heartfelt thing. He's like, oh, don't be weird. All right? Do you still think you can't? Do you still think you can't say, hey, you know what, I'm going to build relationships? I have two friends, two of my best friends. When I first moved here, I didn't have any friends. I didn't know anybody. I was living with my mother-in-law for 8 months, and so we're kind of stuck in this house, and we have a newborn, and I have no outlet. Everywhere I went fishing sucked. I could not catch a fish, and I just didn't know how to catch the fish here, and I was using it. And so finally, one of my best friends, he wasn't my best friend then, he came over and he's like, hey, why don't we go ride around four-wheelers? I've never rode a four-wheeler before, and so we're going all there. We're going to different places, and it took all day, and it was like, man, I think I can make it here. It was in a church where I didn't know how I could trust people. I didn't know anybody there. I didn't have any friends. People weren't really my age, and I didn't know where to go. Madison was with the kids. I was kind of out by myself, and I was just stressed. And I was like, man, I think I made the wrong decision. And somebody just said, hey, why don't we just go hang out, blah, blah, blah. That's all it takes. And I was like, man, you know what? I love it. I love it. It mattered so much to me. It mattered everything to me. And yes, I was a believer, and yes, I was a Christian, and yes, I was following Christ, moving here, but it meant everything to me. And it's not just about making friends. It's about doing what God has called you to do. And my other best friend, my wife met them through the baby and their daycare and everything like that. And I was like, man, you know, I need friends outside of my church. It's just difficult, you know, because I don't want to badmouth the church. I don't want to be badmouthing or anything like that. I just want to be myself, and I want to go. And so they invited me. They like Oklahoma football, and so I got to go and I got to hang out. And I was like, man, they're not. I don't know if they're believers. I don't know that. How's it gonna be? Because I'm a pastor, you know, so things get weird. And like we just head off and we make friends, and we go camping and we do all these things. And it was something that I desperately needed, and it's something that they desperately needed. And it's all about just being available for people. If we get stuck in these ruts of just going to work, coming home, going to church, and we can make it, whatever it is, it's not going to work. You're not going to be fulfilled. Because those two guys mean the world to me. And I mean the world to them. I get it. We know it. But it's just about being available. Did I think going four-wheeling was going to change my life forever? No. They're the two reasons I stayed in Texas, or I didn't go to Texas. Like, I really wanted to go to Texas, but I didn't want to leave these guys and their families. Like, it's part of it. And God was like, hey, I got an option for you then, if that's what you really want. When the Pharisees saw this, they said to his disciples, why is your teacher eating with the tax collectors and sinners? Why is he talking to those guys? The religious people were too good and too busy for God's mission. Have we become too busy for God's mission? Are the people that are not like us just too dirty for us to go see them? I know we wouldn't say that. I know we wouldn't say that out loud. But are we spending time there? I think actions speak louder than words. Are we spending time with them? Are we going to them? Or are we just too busy? Tax collectors and sinners. But when Jesus heard this, he didn't even read his mind that time. They're bold enough to say it out loud. He said, "It is not those who are healthy who need a doctor, but those who are sick. But go and learn what this means. I desire compassion and not sacrifice." So here's the difference between sacrifice and compassion. Sacrifice is ceremonial. It's just the law. It's basically every time in the Old Testament there was blood that had to be drawn. Every time there was sin, you had to kill something and there had to be blood. It's all about religious determination. Is that what our Christianity has become? Going to church and being the good person and doing all this, but never risking anything? You say, you can have all the religious determination. It's not about feeling bad and getting beat up when you go to church or reading a scripture and just feeling bad about yourself. So, oh God, I need more grace. And he's like, no, it's not about that. It's all about, you're going to break laws. He says, what I want is compassion. What I want is compassion. You can have the sacrifices. Yes, it has to be blood, but I took that for you. Now you don't even have to kill the squirrel, right? We get to the vicious. Compassion, he says, is a focus on seeking to help the helpless. Lost people don't know that they're lost. Lost people believe it. Hey, they said, I heard this week, he's like, well, you can't really know the truth. You just saying that makes that your doctrine, right? Like, you can't know that you can't know the truth, right? Like, you can't possibly know that. If you've inverted and you send it back to them, and you can't know that you can't know. So they've decided that. It just shows that they don't know. But we know the truth. But we're sitting on it. And we're keeping it in our homes. We're keeping it, and we're struggling enough with our children. But I promise you, when your children see you going out and risking things for Jesus, they're going to know that Jesus is real in your life. And Jesus will become real in their life. That's just how the gospel is set up. That's how it works. If we sit back, they're going to sit back. If we don't care, they're not going to care. But if we show compassion, if we see seeking helpless people, they're going to see it, and they're going to be uncomfortable with it, and they're not going to want to do it. And that's when you get to tell them, hey, Jesus did this for you. There's no blood they have to pay. He's paid the blood. It's about relational grace. This is how you know you've matured in your Christianity. You seek lost people. You pray for lost people. But you're getting more and more gracious to lost people. Like when people really react badly, are you kinder? Are you kind? Are you more compassionate? Like this is how you know. Jesus never really yelled at the disciples. You ever notice that? Like we read it that way a lot of times. We're like, oh, they're idiots. Why would they do that? But he didn't really read it. He was so kind and gracious to them. The only people that he was really harsh with were all these religious people that were all hypocrites and not doing what he's asking them to do. It's about relational grace. For I did not come to call the righteous, but sinners. If Jesus came to call sinners, he spent time with sinners. We have to ask ourselves, how much time are we spending with lost people? Because he says, follow me and do as I do. But are you spending time with lost people? Let's be the church that occupies ourselves with seeking the lost instead of entertaining the religious. Hey, that man was awesome today. I could do it just on a video, though. We could just do YouTube videos. And if that means this whole place is filled up, or you can't make it, nobody in the band can make it to church because they're meeting, they're going fishing with somebody on Sunday morning, and they're going and helping a doctor, or they're helping out whatever PAs do. I don't know what you do, right? Like then let's do it. Let's do it. Who cares? We can sing songs, and we can still get it, and like it's okay. It's about finding people where they are. You still think you can't? Because I found like for so many years I'm like, I can't do it. I just don't know how to do it. I was in seminary learning all these things. I'm like, I just can't even talk to the guy, my next door neighbor. He's homosexual. So what? Talk to him. He's obviously lost. He obviously needs Christ. Jesus thinks you can do it. Jesus does. Truly, truly, I say to you, He who believes in me, the works that I do, he will do also. And greater works than these he will do. Do you believe that? Do you believe that you can? We don't see these things that God's working through us because we're just not a supernatural church anymore. We don't believe in these things. We're not moving mountains because we don't have the faith for it, because we're occupied by other things. That's just the way it is. We think on these things, and so we don't get to see these. But he's saying, I've given you the power. The Holy Spirit lives inside you. You can do it. You can do these things. The apostles believed this until the day they died or were killed. Look where they went. Another map. Bam. Made this one this week. Look at all these guys. They didn't stay where they are. But gosh, how many people got saved in Jerusalem? Thousands. Like by a day. Thousands. Look where they all went. Look where they all went. But America kind of looks the other way. Like the arrows are going the opposite direction, right? That you need to come to us. You need to come to church. You need to come to this place. You need to come here. Even Matthew went. Like he was a pastor for so many years. He got killed in Africa, Ethiopia. He went somewhere else. He came back. Bartholomew. You never even heard about him. Philip, John. Like all these guys. They went everywhere. They didn't sit down. They didn't keep it to themselves. They knew what was at risk. They knew that the other guys were being killed. It was a risk anywhere they went because they were bold about it. Most often, our greatest danger isn't external. It's our own hearts. It's an idol factory, is what Calvin says. It's an idol factory. Oops, sorry. Jesus never compromised his priorities for you. I like this part. He came upon us wave on wave, right? Wave on wave is a very secular song. It's a country song. I heard it at a church and I was like, man, this is it. Like we could change the words around just a little bit, tweak them a little bit. We didn't have to do much. It wasn't Jake's fault or Kay's fault that I pressed the issue. I wanted them to see because I want to see this is it. This is grace upon grace. Wave on wave is intentionally written to see that it's grace on grace. Like he keeps going after you. Yes, I said, no, I don't want that right now. But he kept going after me. He kept going after me. He'll send this guy. He'll send this guy. He sent this guy. He sent this other person. He sent me this gift. But I was like, I'm not going to do it. I don't want what you got. I ain't buying what you're selling. And finally, I got nothing left. Give me what you got, God. And he sent somebody because people were willing to go. Stop compromising to build relationships. Build relationships. What priorities do you have to re-examine? Because that's it. That's really it. You'll re-examine your priorities. We will re-examine our priorities when we get new jobs. Right? When our kids get in, now that my kids are in soccer, we'll re-examine our priorities so we can make soccer practice and we can make soccer games and like we do all these things. We're just not willing to make priority for other people. And so we've had to do this in our own household. It's tough. But it's worth it. I think. You just have to come to that. So that's what we're doing, Slow Down September. Let's just slow down. I know things ramp up with soccer and all this and all that. But you'll have to re-examine your priorities to make this happen. It's just having one family. Please, it can be people in the church, but let's try to get at least two that aren't going to church, that are in church. Not because of projects, not because of that, just because we need to make time for it. It's just a re-examination. And I know it's difficult. Like when I told my wife, I told Madison, I was like, hey, we're going to do this 4 weeks. Every week just have another family, and she's like, nobody's going to go for that. We don't even want to go for that. I was like, isn't that sad though? We don't have time. Like that's the problem, right? She's like, I know, but just start easy. She's always like, let's get everybody and make everybody happy. And I'm like, well, it's cool. Like it's good to have that. Once a week, just have a family over to your house. Or you go to their house. Or you can have lunch with them. It doesn't matter. Or you go fishing. Like just do something with people where you make time for them. When they start asking later down the line how they get to go closer to the Lord or how they can do that, just because you're showing that, it'll change your life and you'll want to do this more than ever. You'll want to do this. You'll seek this. I promise you. And you'll get out of habit. You'll get back and forth. But this is it. This is what it's about. It's just about making Jesus our week's schedule rather than our schedule and fitting Jesus in on Wednesday or Sunday. Like it's pretty easy. We just have Sunday morning here. And it's like we have a Wednesday night prayer night or Sunday night. But I remember planning it. We're like, oh, we're gonna spend so much time with our friends our church friends on Sunday afternoon, barbecue and do all these things. We've done it like twice. This was just we make excuses and we want relaxation. We want all these things. And it's just a re-examination. Katie, would you come up and sing while we do the last part? Or do you have to run? Okay. I didn't tell her. That's why. I like it when you're on the keys. Jake's like, oh, it's wrong. So where's God taking you today? Let's just pray and see where you can slow down this summer or this September. See how we can help, how we can be a voice, how we can be a light. But don't go through the motions today. Don't just sit there and say, okay, I'm just gonna wait for God. Like actively pray and say, God, help me change my heart to make it like, where am I deceiving myself? I can't know until you tell me. God, you're so good. You never stop. It's wave on wave on wave on wave. And you keep going because where we are isn't where you want us to be. Because you're in the future. You know where we are. You know that sanctification never stops, God. Just get us out of our comfort zones. Get us gospel-driven and not comfort-driven. Not career-driven. Parenting-driven. Soccer mom and dad driven. Help us do something for you, God. I know I can belittle it and say it's only once a week, it's not even once a day. But that's tough. That's a hard place to start. Just give us the opportunity. So I'm gonna shut up and I'm gonna let you guys just pray.
You want to pray or?
You can.
Okay. Dear Lord, just thank you for this day and thank you for the message. Help us to be bold and courageous and just, most of all, be willing, Lord, to make you the King of our lives. Be with us this week and help us to incorporate these things every day. I pray in Jesus' name, amen. All right. Do we have coffee?
Yep.
All right. You guys are dismissed.